Hello and welcome to the GP podcast from the Irish College of GPs with me, Dr John Maher. I'm recording this episode on Wednesday the 1st of April, and it being the first Wednesday of the month, it's also Wednesday webinar day, with the webinar taking place on Zoom at 8 o'clock tonight as usual. And that being the case, we felt we risked oversaturating our audience between a Wednesday webinar as well as an educational podcast all on the same day. So we thought we'd take this opportunity to actually pivot towards a different type of episode. And what we're going to do is preview the Wednesday webinar as well as go through some of the listener feedback that we've had so far. The idea here is not just to create a preview of the webinar, but also to add a description of each presentation in the show notes along with a link to the recording. And if you're a college member, you'll be able to access that recording as soon as it goes live. The purpose here is that over time, as these webinar recordings are added to the podcast feed once a month, all listeners will continue to be able to go back and listen to podcast episodes of interest to them, while college members will also be able to click on the webinar link for topics of interest, log into their college account on the college website, and access the webinar material too, all from the podcast feed on your device. And if you're listening to this on a podcast player like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, you can use the search functionality in your player to find those topics of interest to you in the back catalogue, not just from the podcast, but from the Wednesday webinar too. So in essence, what we're trying to achieve by adding everything into the podcast feed is to make it as easy as possible for our members to be able to search, find and consume educational material that's of interest to them on the go. So if you check the show notes accompanying today's episode, you'll find a link to the webinar page on the college website, and members can click the link, log into the college website and go from there. And a recording of tonight's webinar will be added to that page as usual once it becomes available. So if you're listening to this after the 1st of April, go ahead and click that link in the show notes and you should have access to the webinar if you're a college member. Okay, so I'm going to begin now by previewing tonight's Wednesday webinar, which is chaired by Dr Suzanne Kelly, Irish College of GP's Deputy Medical Director. And Suzanne is also the driving force behind the podcast, so sincere thanks again to Suzanne for all your support and encouragement. Topics covered tonight include assessment and management of pain in life-limiting conditions with Dr David Byrne from St Francis Hospice in Blanchardstown. Open disclosure in general practice with Dr Siobhan O'Flaherty, GP Clinical Risk Advisor with Medisec. Skip the dip with Dr Scott Walkin, Clinical Lead with the College Antimicrobial Resistance and Infection Control. And cocaine use, the GP perspective with Dr Crowley, Academic Lead with the College Addiction Management Programme. And just to highlight quickly some of the overlap between tonight's content and some of the material available in the podcast feed, some of you may recall that Dr. Scott Walkin had an episode on UTI management in primary care. That was episode 4 in the podcast, and that's available in the show feed. And Dr. Crowley, as I said, is talking about cocaine use tonight, and the theme of addiction was recently featured in Dr. Bernard Kenny's recent episode, Codeine Misuse and Dependence in Primary Care, which came out last week and is now in the feed. And as a reminder, if you're a college member listening to this after the 1st of April, please check the show notes in a few days for a link to the recording for college members. So I'm going to move on now from the Wednesday webinar preview to suggestions that we've received from listeners so far. And many thanks to everybody who has taken the time to do so. So Kevin in Cork suggests some episodes on common dermatology topics in primary care, as does Sarah in Wexford. And Sarah also suggests some women's health topics such as contraception and menopause, while Siobhan suggests something on lifestyle medicine. So all really interesting topics, and thank you again for taking time to write in. We do have a plan around how we might action suggestions that we receive from listeners. What we're hoping to do is to select some of these suggestions, put them in a poll for listeners, allowing you to select your favourite from the list, and then whichever the most popular suggestion is will be turned into a future episode. We're really trying to create content that is relevant and reflects the needs of listeners, so do please keep the ideas coming, and you can expect some kind of a poll to be released in the coming weeks, so watch this space. And then apart from episode suggestions, we've also had a couple of questions from Maria and Kieran around how you can record credits in your e-portfolio for listening to the podcast. And I'm told by college that you can self-record this time as work-based learning, or WBL credits, in your e-portfolio. Approximately 1 hour of learning equates to 1 credit, and this may be of value to you as we approach the end of the PCS year on the 30th of April. So that's it for listener feedback for now. And again, thanks to everybody for reaching out to us, and do get in touch if you have any comments, feedback or suggestions. And before I wrap up today, I would like to say a really sincere thanks once again for all the support and incredible response to the podcast. We launched just 4 weeks ago and have already attracted over 5,000 episode downloads, over 65-star ratings on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and we've held the top spot on Apple Podcasts' medical podcast chart. So a huge thank you, not just from me, but also from Suzanne and the entire college team working hard behind the scenes to make sure the show meets the standards that you expect from college regarding quality educational material that's relevant to you at every stage of your career. So if you're enjoying the podcast, please do like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help the show to grow. And even better again, a personal recommendation to a colleague would go a long way as well. Okay, that's it for today. As always, you can get in touch by contacting us at podcast@icgp.ie. Many thanks again for listening, and until next time, take care.